Somebody asked me a few weeks ago if I could sleep in a strange bed. I said I would have had a totally different life. I couldn't sleep in a strange bed. But anyway. I remember my first grade teacher on two counts. One was we had books, and I remember one of the books about Kofi in Ghana and Chingling in China and Hans in Holland. Kids our age and how they lived in other places. And I loved that book. The sense that you're part of the world, it's part of you. Get to know it. You know, who is out there? That teacher had a, who is this? Philosophy, not a, who is that? You know, philosophy. So did we. After college, I worked for 5 years and saved my money. I debated whether to go get a PhD or go around the world. I chose to go around the world because I left in October '56 with my 5-year savings and a dozen freelance jobs that I had organized. I mean, it was pennies, but it still gave you a little more leverage. Spent 3 months in Europe getting briefed because the United States, we didn't even have a State Department on Africa at that time. We were still dealing with London, Brussels, Paris, the colonial establishment. I did research on education and economics, and so I would talk to teachers, students, primary school, secondary school, universities, teachers union. I hadn't really traveled much before. I certainly hadn't been overseas. I mean, so I was learning about myself and finding that I'm thorough. If you're like that, you don't make it around the world, and I didn't. But I spent 26 months in Africa. I did go talk to Ted Sorensen, and he said, would I like to draft a speech, which was going to be Kennedy's first speech on African policy, to the American Society of African Culture in 1959. And I said, yes, I would, you know, and so I did. And then they asked me to stay on and plan a trip and do some other Africa stuff. And I did. That was intentionally for 6 weeks. Well, I was there for a year and a half until he was elected. Kennedy was wonderful. I mean, it was really fun to work for him because he really read what you wrote. He paid attention to, he got it, if you know what I mean. And he was interested in what other people were thinking and knowing and wanting. It wasn't all that kind of, how can I manipulate this in the U.S. interest? The U.S. interest was part of knowing what the rest of the world was doing and then linking. That was a period when people from Africa were starting to come. So in fact, it was, it was a natural for what I had been doing to arrange briefings not only for Kennedy, but for staff in the House and the Senate, because there weren't very many people around who knew who could do that. I worked on the Peace Corps for the Kennedy office. Yes, I was in a very thick of things, but I feel like my contribution was, if any, my contribution was keeping the Peace Corps from being a propaganda instrument of the Department of Defense. They asked me if I thought a woman in mining could be significant in a company doing mining in Africa. And I said yes. It was probably a very good time. It was 1966 to 75. Zambia had become Zambia from northern Rhodesia, was recently independent. It was also a country that I had been in before. Actually, I had visited the mines when I was there on the first go-round. The company that I was with, while it didn't run the mines in Zambia, it had a very significant interest in it. I was a pariah to the other company. And I mean, who is this woman? You know, she's not a miner, she's an economist, she's young. She's, I mean, you know, you're not a welcome presence when you're niggling people who've been mining for 30 years in a place successfully, you know, rightly. So, but we went the whole round, and when when their number 2 person left, he called me in and he thanked me. And he said, we wouldn't have done this without you. They did address the question of wages. They did address the question of training. They did address the question of housing and facilities and vacation. And I don't mean it was, can you be better without having been good? You know, it was less bad. You see me where I live, you know, and we've had an active tenants organization. And I wasn't particularly active in it until probably the 80s, but have been active in it ever since. And I mean, you know, in a tenants organization, a lot of what you do is solving people's, or not solving, but helping people solve what are significant issues, but rather small potatoes in,
yes.
domestic. But, and a part of it is teaching people how to do that, and we are also getting management to be responsive. But this tenant organization has also done some things that have affected the whole state. You know, we meet every week, and you can see a lot of paper around, and a lot of it is that right now. It's fun. Well, it is.